Hello everyone, and welcome to Earth Archives. If you've ever had a quiet moment late at night and suddenly felt a small quiet spot inside you that aches just a little, then this episode might be for you. Before we begin, gently hit like, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with that person who makes your heart soften just thinking of them. Some things, if never properly spoken, just get stuck inside. I want to start by asking, why did you become so fascinated with the topic of the inner child?
Because I realized something. Almost all the pain adults carry isn't really new. It's just taking a different form. The things you thought were long gone, they've just been held down. You learn to appear normal, mature, reliable. But at certain moments, what you've been holding down slips out, reminding you that it never truly left.
So you think a lot of our emotional reactions now aren't actually directly caused by what's happening today?
Exactly. Often, it's just old wounds being touched. I've seen so many people saying they're fine, while in relationships, they're terrified of being abandoned. At work, they're terrified of making mistakes. And in groups, they're terrified of being unnecessary. They're not fragile. They just learned very early that if I'm not good enough, I'll lose love. And the ones who learned that lesson usually learned it when they were very young.
But did such serious things really happen when we were kids? Sometimes I can't even remember any specific trauma.
Trauma doesn't have to be a dramatic event. Most of the time, it's about prolonged absence. For example, when you were sad, no one sat down to ask what was wrong. When you were happy, no one really listened. When you were scared, you were told not to think so much. When you cried, you were told to stop. Over time, you learn one thing, not that there's something wrong with you, but that your feelings aren't needed.
So it's not that we don't want to speak, but that we learned not to speak?
Yes. For a child, being ignored hurts more than being scolded. Being scolded at least means you were noticed. Being ignored makes you question your own worth. So you slowly adjust, become quieter, less needy, less troublesome. You hide your true emotions, not because you're not sincere, but because it feels safer.
You just said hide, and a picture comes to mind, a tiny version of myself pushed into a dark corner.
That image is actually very accurate. The inner child hasn't disappeared. It's just hiding. Hiding behind your rational mind, behind your mature tone, behind the "it's okay" you say in a moment. You may look fine on the outside, even successful, but only you know that some nights you feel a loneliness you can't put into words. No matter how many people are around, you're not really there.
That feeling is really hard to describe. It's like nothing's happening, but there's just this emptiness.
That's because your true self hasn't been brought into your present life. You live, work, love, socialize, but the most authentic part of you is still stuck in the past, in those moments when you learn to stay silent, to endure, to stop expecting. So you feel a little off, without being able to put your finger on why.
Does that mean we've actually lost touch with ourselves a long time ago?
Many of us have, and often very early. But we call that state growing up. You'll notice that the more a child is praised for being well-behaved or mature, the earlier they tend to give up on their true needs. They learn quickly. This is the only way not to cause trouble.
But living like that, doesn't it get exhausting?
Yes, and it's a fatigue you can't easily explain. It's not your body that's tired, it's your soul. You're constantly monitoring yourself. Too much, too little, right, wrong, liked, disliked. This long-term self-suppression slowly numbs you until one day, standing in front of a mirror, you suddenly feel that person looking back is a little unfamiliar.
So the inner child isn't some abstract concept, it's the part of ourselves we left behind in the past?
Exactly. It's very concrete. It remembers every moment you weren't held, every time you wished to be hugged but weren't, every time you longed for affirmation but had to digest it alone. Those memories didn't disappear, they became emotions, hidden in how you react today.
And if that child keeps hiding, how do we find them?
It's not about searching. It's about stopping the running. When you slow down and allow your vulnerability to exist, that child will come out on their own, because they never left. They've just been waiting for you to turn back.
You just said that the child has been waiting for us to turn back. So if we really do turn back, what would the first step be?
The first step isn't about changing. It's about acknowledging. Acknowledge that the part of you that always says, "I'm fine," is actually really tired. Acknowledge that you're not too fragile. You've just been holding on for too long. Many people rush to get better at the start of healing. But the truly important thing is to allow yourself not to be perfect. If you can simply say to yourself, "I know it hasn't been easy for you to get this far," your inner child has already begun to be seen.
But a lot of people, the moment they pause, get overwhelmed by emotions and become even more afraid to face them.
That's because those emotions have never been allowed to flow safely. They don't suddenly appear. They surface because you finally stop keeping the door so tightly shut. At this point, you don't need to analyze or explain. Just sit with yourself, like you would with a crying child. Don't rush to quiet them. Just let them know that you're not going to leave them alone.
That sounds very gentle, but in real life, we still have to deal with work, relationships, and other responsibilities.
Of course, true healing isn't about leaving life behind. It's about bringing yourself fully into life. You'll start noticing something. When you stop ignoring yourself, your responses to the outside world change. You become better at distinguishing what belongs to the present and what is leftover pain from the past. You no longer feel insignificant every time someone doesn't reply to your message, because you've already held that part of yourself that was afraid of being ignored.
So, safety doesn't actually come from others?
Safety initially comes from relationships. Yes, but mature safety comes from the promise you make to yourself. Many people carry tension in their bodies for a lifetime, not because the world is truly that dangerous, but because they've never told themselves, "I will protect you." When you start doing that, your nervous system gradually lowers its guard.
You mentioned forgiveness before. I've always thought that's the hardest part.
That's because forgiveness is often misunderstood as "just let it go, it's fine," or "pretend it didn't happen." True forgiveness is acknowledging that it really hurt, that it was unfair, and then choosing not to let that past continue to control your present life. Sometimes the person we most need to forgive isn't someone else. It's the part of ourselves that keeps blaming ourselves for not being enough.
Does saying "I'm sorry" to your inner child actually work?
It works very well. It's a phrase that comes long overdue. When you say, "I'm sorry you had to hold on alone for so long, you did nothing wrong," you'll feel something inside loosen. It's not just psychological suggestion, it's a relational repair. You're rebuilding trust with yourself.
Hearing this, I suddenly realize that being whole isn't about becoming someone else.
Exactly. Wholeness isn't about adding something new. It's about reclaiming. You're not meant to become stronger. You're meant to gather back the parts of yourself you once abandoned, little by little. You can be vulnerable, and you can be strong. You can need others, and you can be independent. When these parts stop opposing each other, you'll feel like you're finally standing on your own side.
So when someone truly returns to themselves, what changes in life?
You become less rushed, less forced, less resentful. You're no longer so afraid of losing, because you're no longer alone. You've become your own companion. At that point, you'll notice many relationships naturally shift. Some people drift away, some stay, and you no longer need to prove anything.
If someone watching this right now is still hurting, what would you want to say to them?
I'd tell them, please don't rush to get better. You're in pain not because something is wrong with you, but because you're finally starting to feel. That's a signal of turning a corner, not a sign of failure. As long as you stay by your own side, the path is already moving forward.
Finally, if you could leave one message for everyone learning to hold themselves, what would it be?
I'd say what was forgotten isn't you. It's the time in your life when you weren't treated properly. Now, you can become the one willing to stay. Tell yourself, I see you. You belong here. You are safe. You are enough. I forgive you. These words are light, but they can carry you very far.
If any of these words quietly paused you, consider sharing this video with someone you know also needs it. Don't forget to subscribe and like our channel, so these gentle but important words can reach more people. And feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments, because your story might just become someone else's light. Thank you for being here, slowly returning to yourself. There's always someone waiting for you there.